Port Richey City Council meeting, Wednesday, August 24th. At this time, I'd like to invite Pastor Ward for our invocation. Please stand.
Thank you, sir. Lord, we again call on you for wisdom and order tonight in our meeting. We just thank you for the goodness in our city, and Lord, for our hearts to be filled with the insight and understanding for godly decisions. Lord, we ask you to continue to protect and provide for our fire and police department. Lord, we thank you that we can personally have hands-on from them, and we thank you for them. And Lord, provisions for all our workers. And Lord, during this quick rise in inflation, we just pray that our budget would be stretched. You give us wisdom for things to work together. Lord, I just kind of feel like you blessed the little boy's lunch and fed thousands. So Lord, just take our budget and stretch it out for what needs to do. And Lord, particularly during this hurricane season, we just petition you to have your hand upon us, Lord, with the rains and the winds and things, and just keep the waters flowing where they need to go. And thank you for our team, and just put your covering over and protect us from any destruction of the storm. We just thank you for tonight and give you praise for your love and goodness, and we look to your mercy and goodness, and we just ask it in Jesus' name.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Scott Tremblay.
Here.
Vice Mayor Tom Kinsella. Let the record show that Vice Mayor Tom Kinsella is absent from tonight's meeting. Councilman Todd McClary. Let the record show that Councilman Todd McClary is absent from tonight's meeting. Councilwoman Linda Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilman Bill Colombo.
Here.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager John Duke. And let the record show that City Manager John Duke is absent from tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve council minutes.
Motion to approve council minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We're going to open up to the commentary from the general public. We'll start with the sign-up sheet, and then whoever else would like to speak, by show of hands, we'll do that. The first person signing up is Pastor Leonard Lord. Welcome. Come on.
Thank you, sir. Leonard Lord. I pastored 8114 Leo Kidd Avenue, going on 28 years. I do want to remind you of our Cure Fest coming up, and we just want to be a blessing. I'm just going to kind of read from the flyer what it is. It's something to just cure for our community. It's got a picture of some bees. It says, "Be contagious, making curing contagious." Cure Fest, Saturday, September 24th. Cure Fest is a Christ-centered community service day sponsored by Somebody Cares Pasco. Join others from churches throughout the area to share the love of Christ, helping to serve our community. A variety of projects are available for all abilities. You can contact Pastor Jerry Heckikes and secure a project for the group. We meet at 8:30 at Waterfront Park on Old Post Road. We'll be going out at 9 o'clock to do the projects, and then we'll be coming back at 12:30 where we'll have a lunch and share what we've done and how we can better serve our community. So we just want to thank y'all for being a part of it and let us there. We're looking maybe with code enforcement, any way we can help in the city to serve. Some things we can do, and particularly if there's anything in Waterfront Park you see if we can give attention to, we'll have a whole team out there. And also, I know Pat and Danny shared the backpack giveaway, but it grows every year. We just had a great spirit, a great time. A lot of people got ministered to, and so just thank y'all for allowing us to be there. I don't think there's anything any healthier than people that love God and people have a zeal for a community to just get together and make things better. So thank you, Mayor, Council, and everybody, and particularly want to thank y'all for always being there for the departments. Man, just what a blessing when y'all are there on the hill with the fire trucks and the cars and the people and the children. So thank all of you again. It's an honor to serve. God bless you.
Thank you, Pastor Lord. We're going to welcome Pat Rogers at this time.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Pat Rogers, 4838 Sunset Boulevard. I don't know who did it, but I want to thank them for filling in that ditch that was part of Pier right down before it turns onto Sunset, because it's Got a nice, good asphalt patch on it now, so you can drive through without feeling like you're going to break something in your vehicle. And I'd like to thank the utilities department, because I know our poor guys have been out working all hours to fix water main breaks and line breaks. So they just need to know we appreciate them.
Thank you. That's all that signed up. Show of hands. Anyone else like to speak? Just raise your hand. Seeing no hands, we're going to move on to commentary. Normally from our city manager, I'm going to pass it over to our finance director if she has any commentary.
I have no problem.
Okay. We'll open up with commentary from either myself or the council.
No, we used to have commentary from the city attorney, but Jim really doesn't want it.
We used to, that's correct.
Yeah, he used to be right after city manager. I mean, and invariably, whatever attorney was like, I have no comment, so we just stopped. I would like to thank whatever staff was involved with tearing apart council chambers, holding an election, and putting it all back together for us today. I don't know who it was, but thank you very much to them. I see that Development Services is starting a new weekly sort of reach out. Your Tuesday tips, I'm happy to see that. The more city engagement with department engagements with the public is a very good thing. I look forward to more of that, as well as the future of making our city website even better. I know that's not necessarily your thing, but we had some discussions, and our website is lacking in some areas, but I also know, in looking at some other websites like the county and Newport Richey, it's a lot easier to find stuff even as our website is right now than it is on some of the other websites. So I know a lot of times we get beat up. The website could be better, and obviously it could be, but yeah, there's some cities out there that's absolutely horrible. So other than that, yep, that's all I have to say. Nothing all that important.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't have anything right now, thank you.
No?
Nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll go along with that as well. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. And I'm just looking for a motion and or any questions or comments.
My only single question is, the audit, is that for the city audit or the CRO? I know we did two different ones on the consent agenda.
The 17,000?
Yeah, EFPR Group LLP.
That's for the city audit.
That's the railroad
Yeah.
city audit. Okay, yeah, no, yeah, okay. That's the only question, just curiosity. Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We're going to move on to council business at this time. First item, the CRA audit recommendations. And that's the consideration of the CRA size or boundaries. I'm going to pass that over to our city attorney, Mr. Matthew, for introduction.
I'm going to take the first three, Your Honor. Rich will next me, and I will. This is the city resolution, which I'm going to read by title only in a few minutes, which will be the final step in removing Sand Pebble from the CRA. I really hope it passes, since if you don't pass it now, we've run out of time, and they've already booked this into the budget for next year. So the CRA recommended to the city council, I know you are the CRA, to remove it, so there's been discussion there. You're mandated, and we served the taxing authorities, all of them. Ashley will learn how to do that. But this meeting's here, so the purpose of the meeting, this on the agenda, is to allow the public to comment upon it. So you could ask if anybody in the public wants to motion. The first thing you're looking at here in the package is the resolution of the CRA. That's with the attachments, and then behind that, with about 6 pages back, you see resolution 2206. Your Honor, it's your permission. I'm going to read it by title only.
Yes.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Port Richey amending the City of Port Richey Community Redevelopment Agency redevelopment plan, providing for findings, amending the community redevelopment plan to exclude certain property from the redevelopment area, providing an effective date.
Thank you. Before I open it to council, this time I'm going to open it up to public commentary, given the nature of this item, before we then discuss it up here. Nobody signed up for this item, but by show of hands, would anyone like to speak? Seeing no hands from the general public, I'm going to open it up to either a motion or commentary from
I move to adopt resolution number 22-06.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We're going to move on to the next
Not to
item.
rush through that, but we've all discussed it many
Yes.
times, so there wasn't really a lot to talk
And
about.
by recollection, I remember the other two were in favor of it last
Yes,
time.
I agreed, yeah.
So we're going to move on to the first reading of ordinance 22-684, floodplain management amendment. I'm going to pass that to our city attorney as well, Mr. Matthew.
Thank you, Your Honor. Veronica, feel free to jump in at any time here. This is a very exciting FEMA. I think
was
someone write this.
It was a page turner, but yeah.
To keep our flood insurance rates down, we follow FEMA guidelines. And FEMA now has made another change. I think we made one regarding fertilizer last year. Okay, this one here that I'll take you through very briefly is a change mostly with regard to mobile homes. That's the best way to describe it. Because there's several changes for it. I put the entire FEMA code section here, our compliance code section here, which FEMA helps with the language. I didn't pick this language. But what you can do is if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, and this is the first reading, by the way, it's an ordinance because we're changing our code regarding our FEMA compliance. If you look in the bottom right-hand corner, you see numbers in a square. To the left of that is a page number. If you go to page 19, and so you'll see what's happening here is they're adding a definition for accessory structure. What they're doing is getting more defined with regard to mobile homes and accessory structures. So some people have been arguing about which is which. Then you go to page 21, 2 pages later, they've taken out the definition for existing manufactured homes and home parks. And then if you go to page 23, which is probably the most important thing, is they've changed what market value means, okay? And pretty much what they're saying is the term market value is the actual cash value in kind replacement, as opposed to someone bringing in straw buyers and sellers to pump prices up. And I'm making that presumption won't be the purpose.
Yeah, I mean, could you
Sure.
get into that just a little deeper as to how now market value is determined? They're basically looking at the property, looking at the age of the building, depreciating it, that sort of thing?
Well, before it used to say what a willing buyer would.
Yeah,
So that could be anybody.
The market-
What's market
what's the
value?
going rate, yeah.
Market value, I would presume, would be on a case-by-case basis. Veronica may know how we do it here, but generally it's going to be if somebody comes in with you know what, they're going to fix it up. It's 51% knocked down or something like this. They're going to come in with an estimate from a contractor, okay, to do that, or an appraisal of some type, because mobile homes are personal property as opposed to. That's where I could explain it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's correct. So right now, currently, we're allowed 50% of a substantial improvement on any structure that's out there. Unless you have a private appraisal licensed by a state licensed appraisal, we go off of the property appraiser. We go off the assessed value of the building only, not the land, not the fixtures or anything else, just the building. So if it exceeds the 50%, then we can suggest that they get a state license appraisal, or they cannot complete the project within any 1 year. So they have a year to do those repairs and those substantial improvements. But they can draw it out for 3 years if they choose to and break it down. This year do a roof, next year do the rest of your projects. But they have to comply within that 50%.
So given my house, that would probably be like one window a year.
It could be. Sometimes the projects can't go down. Yeah. It just depends on what it's assessed at.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, thank you.
And this is all addressed towards manufactured homes, but the same theory applies.
Right.
Okay. And then on page 25, you'll see they talk about non-elevated accessory structures. And because people are doing different things to try and get around the code. And those non-elevated accessory structures, which would be something on the ground, can only be used for parking or storage. And then they get more specific what coastal areas, what they could do. Okay, you can have flood openings. I guess those are knockout walls, and you can read them yourselves. But they're getting much more specific about something that's not even a building, uninhabitable.
Another quick
Yeah.
question. Does this comport with other areas in our code? Or do we possibly have conflict here?
That's what I was gonna
No,
ask.
there's no conflict with anywhere else in our code, that I can assure you. Yeah, oh, no.
Specifically, accessory structures and things like that.
No, and these accessory structure definitions are solely for this portion of the code. Okay, these definitions only go to this section.
Very good.
And, I'm sorry, then on page 29 is probably the meat of it, in my opinion. As you can see now, all manufactured homes, this is what they were changing. All manufactured homes that are placed, that means new, right? Replaced or substantially improved in flood hazard areas shall be elevated such that the bottom of the frame is at or above the elevation required as applicable flood zone area. And then they cite the building code. Now, how high that is, I can't tell you, and it's probably different for the two zones. So we've had some problems with that in the past, and now it's been very specific of how high it's got to be.
That's correct.
We're pretty much the entire city's in VRA, isn't it?
That I don't know.
Is the entire city in what?
The zones. And pretty much,
So most of our city is in an AE zone currently.
Right.
We do have some VE zones, but when they redid the FEMA maps,
most of them at
and
the
those are
AE.
redone every 5
I know
years.
the velocity zones are
Yes.
like,
The high wind.
right. I'm curious as to the A
The
zone.
mobile homes now can't be down as low as they are because of the sea level rise and all of the water and the hurricanes and stuff. Now they're gonna have to be elevated just like a single family structure.
How high are they gonna have to be, do you know?
It depends.
Yeah.
So we require an elevation certificate in order to find out where the ground sits currently, because every elevation in Port Richey is different. Some may have a 10, some might be at a 6, so we go with an elevation certificate to tell us exactly where they're at. Then we go to the FEMA flood maps and we locate what their base flood elevation is, and then they have to be a foot above that.
If I'm not wrong, I think you can actually go to FEMA's website and look up your flood elevation.
You can,
Yeah.
yeah. We do that.
Yeah,
We
so
do
it
that,
could
but
be-
for
It could
certainty-
be 9 feet, 10 feet, I think where I'm at, it's like 12 feet.
Yeah. But we have found with FEMA's flood maps that there may be some discrepancies. We have found it doesn't happen typical,
Right.
but it has happened. So we always ask for an elevation certificate.
yeah.
Sometimes they're just costly and people just don't want to pay that. Then we go by what FEMA says,
Yeah, well,
what
you
their
don't
maps
wanna-
say.
you don't want to lay down that first level and find out you're
Correct.
6
Yeah.
inches off.
Yeah, yeah. So this is making it more stringent. It's going to make it more uniformed with our single-family structures, at least for us in the city, because we're in the coastal zone. So I think it's a good amendment. It's great.
Anything else, Mr. City Manager? City Secretary.
Nothing else. And this, yeah,
You have been before.
I,
so-
for a year, I know. I remember it very well. Every day.
Yeah, you don't forget anything like that.
This is the entire floodplain management portion of the code. That's why there's no conflicts or anything, and anything discussing raising buildings because of the flood. I'd like to take credit for this entire wall of verbiage here, but they gave it to us, and they insist that not one comma be changed, by the way, in order to maintain our rating. Having said that, I'll read it by title only, Your Honor.
Yes,
I would
please.
just like to add, I appreciate the highlights and the strikeouts that
Yeah.
made the review much easier. Thank you.
I read by title only. This is the first reading, ordinance number 22-684, an ordinance of the City of Port Richey amending the Land Development Code, Chapter 109, flood damage prevention, and adding new section 109-317, non-elevated accessory structures, to provide for accessory structures in flood hazard areas to specify elevation of manufactured homes in flood hazard areas, providing for applicability and severability, providing for an effective date. Looking for a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 22-684.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're gonna move on to the staff grant, which is Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program. I'm gonna pass that to our city attorney, Mr. Matthew, for introduction.
Yes, this is, Linda, Ms. Rodriguez, this may be the first time you've seen it. I don't
Yes,
know if you
it is.
remember, we pass this just about every other year. It's a grant given to Pasco County. It's a pass-through grant. It's for the entire county, and there's a program the sheriff's office applies for it. It's the Narcotics Apprehension Program. Chief's probably very familiar with it. What we get out of it, I put him on the spot and he can answer it since it's not my agenda item, but it doesn't cost us anything, and we get free benefit from it, right?
Yes.
There you go.
And our officers like the overtime, do they not?
Good.
Always do. Yeah.
We'll just look for a motion to approve it.
Motion to approve, staff agreement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, you can sign it, Chief.
We'll move on to the purchase request for an F-250 emergency lighting package. I'm going to pass that to our finance director.
This up to yell. Okay, so this is for the fire department. We purchased an F-250 last fall in November, and so they're looking to purchase and install emergency lighting for that vehicle. This is a piggyback off the Bradford County contract, so we're just looking for approval on this purchase.
So this is budgeted, already been budgeted from Penny.
Correct, yes, it's budgeted in penny for Pasco in FY22, current year. Yep.
The question is, why didn't we outfit the trucks when we purchased them? What happened? Are we changing the purpose of the truck? Or?
I think we speak to that, and we were waiting for a delivery date on the truck before we purchased these. Yeah, we were waiting to get a firm delivery date before we did this expenditure.
We had to, us and the police department and the rest of the city had to get the trucks purchased rather quickly, or else we would have missed the cutoff to get trucks delivered within this calendar year for Ford. So what we had to do is we had to buy the vehicles and then do the emergency lighting, but we chose not to do the emergency lighting in front of you guys until we knew the vehicles were actually going to be purchased and sent here. So that's why it's coming in front of you guys.
Sorry.
We're one item at a time here because I see there's another lighting package coming up. So
Are they the same lighting packages and, you know, I know obviously two different trucks, but same thing? Are they duplicate?
Yeah, there's pictures actually on there. I mean, the vehicle itself can be a different vehicle. But the only thing that's going to really set yourself off is the chief's vehicle is about $1,000 more, just because we're installing a command board inside the truck, command slide out tray for him to be able to have the command capabilities on site fire scenes and stuff.
Okay. So basically same thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
So having several motions here, or vendors, I should say, the preferred vendor would be Dana Supply. That's what we.
Dana was the only one that actually won the Bradford County contract.
Okay.
So they're the only ones that we can.
So I'm just looking for a wording for a motion.
No, the motion is, as finance director stated, this is a piggyback, okay, and they have all the supporting documentation. So a motion to approve the expenditure of $18,000.
Okay, so
because it's in excess of 10 is your own.
So I motion to approve the expenditure of $18,857.15 for the F-250 emergency lighting package.
Second.
before we vote, anyone from the public like to speak on this item? Seeing no hands, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We're going to go to item number 7, which is a purchase request for F-350 emergency light package. That was already previously discussed with the 250 light package. So I'm either looking for a motion and or any further discussion.
Motion to approve the purchase of the emergency light package for the F-350.
Perfect. That's good.
Oh, second, sorry. It's my job, there's nobody else here.
I'm being very good.
It's a great motion, but you know,
Step up, Bill.
I'm sitting
Step
here
up.
just daydreaming.
We're running out of seconds.
There's nobody else to second it here.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're going to move on to the utilities and stormwater draft budget discussion. And this is a carryover and a continuation of our, what would have been a budget workshop, but we're doing it as council business. So with that, I'd like to invite our finance director for introduction. And we had, I think, some specific issues that came up last time, but I was going to allow you to introduce it.
Yeah, so this is a continuation of our FY23 proposed operating budget. I know that there was a request from council to remove salaries, council salaries from the utility fund and stormwater fund. So I'd want to provide you with those costs. So that's $8,950 from the utility fund and $1,289 from the stormwater fund. And then the cost allocations was $4,170 from the utility fund and $223 from the stormwater fund. So collectively, it's $14,632 is the impact of removing council salary and expenses. So that would increase the millage rate by 0.05. So the new millage rate would be 6.35. And then I wanted to show that the expenditures for the utility budget is an increase of 3.29% from the prior year, and stormwater is 0.5% increase from prior year. There are currently no rate changes, so we estimate revenues will remain around the same, and the difference would be funded from reserves except for stormwater, as there are really no reserve funds remaining. So stormwater rates have not been updated since their inception in '06. They remain at the original rate of $3 per billing unit, and we did discuss this. I pulled it up, I think it was last December, that we came in and kind of discussed what we projected the rate would need to be around to fund current operations. And we came up with around, I think it was $7.35 per ESU, so that would be per household, to fund current operations. And like I said, currently it's at $3, and that has not changed since 2006. On the utility rate side, for water and sewer rates, that has not increased or changed since 2013. It was set by ordinance. And that ordinance approved a rate increase of about 3.75% annually. And that started in 2014, 2015, 2016, and then 2017. However, in 2017, they didn't actually increase the rates until May of 2021. So that left 17, 18, 19, 20 with no increase in utility rates for water and sewer. So we're looking at a substantial increase in those utility rates to fund current operations. So on a $6,000 gallon of water a month bill, I came up with around $18 would be the increase in that bill. But there are other charges as well for water and sewer, things like turn-on fee, meter install charges. And I wanted to give some examples of how low ours are currently. So to turn on somebody's water after non-payment, we just charge $40, whereas Pasco County charges $145. And then if somebody needs to turn off their water during the day, they just call in and we do it at no charge. And Pasco County charges $165 for that. If they need to install a 3/4 inch meter, we charge $100. Pasco County charges $375. So I think if we increase those small fees as well, that would help to offset some of the rate charges from being increased.
And if I may open up commentary from the council, I recall very specifically the discussion we had, because it's been a hot topic on the stormwater, needing to increase the revenue to meet our budgetary concerns for this year coming up. And I remember the consensus of the council, of this council, was that I don't think any of us were comfortable raising rates or setting a rate without having the proper study. And we felt, I think at the time, I think we were in agreement that that study had to come from an outside vendor, or be outsourced, not from anybody within the city. So, I think that's where we're at. I don't think we can balance this part of the budget until that's done, from what I can tell. So, I'm not comfortable with voting for a budget.
So the budget is balanced. It's funded from reserves currently. So what we've projected is our actual expenditures, what we need to spend for staffing and operating expenses. And then so to offset that, it's our revenues and reserves.
Comes out of reserves from general fund?
No, from utility fund.
No, but our stormwater, we don't have reserves there that would cover it.
Correct. So we're looking to increase those ASAP. So we should be able to fulfill those revenues.
But that's what I was referring to. We can't solidify a balanced budget.
It's just a projection of revenues. You can put whatever you want on there for revenues. It's a projection. They could come in under, they could come in over, but it's a projection.
Because if it's going to be from an outside source,
We're offsetting our expenses. What we need to spend for salary and operating expenses, that's what we've budgeted for FY23. And then, so the offset would be what we're projecting we need in revenues. And that would be done by that rate study.
Right, but what I'm saying is I'm not comfortable doing that, saying this is how much we're going to spend, so we would have to charge this much. versus having an outside source come in, which is, I think, what we had talked about way back in September.
So then you would cut operating expenses?
That's what my theory would be, is we're gonna have to make cuts until that's done, because I'm not comfortable voting for something where we're saying we're gonna raise rates when we don't know, have the basis for that. An independent basis outside of where we're at, so my preference would be to cut, and
Of what?
cut the expenses.
Which would be salaries,
Yes, ma'am.
which would be jobs.
No.
What's the rest?
Reallocate the salaries back to general.
That would be another way to do it, but
Can I jump in? for a
Yes.
second? Yeah, I'm kind of playing off what you're saying. I mean, I'm looking at, page 236. If y'all take a peek there. That's, of course, presented page 236. Which would be the utility fund, correct?
Yes.
Why am I still seeing city council there?
Oh, this is the original budget that I created. I did not update it yet, as I was not sure how you wanted to proceed, and it wasn't, yeah, it wasn't really voted on,
We're
so.
looking at a budget now that still hasn't been updated with what we asked for. Okay, that's one thing.
So-
Let's go to the next page, 237. If you look at the bottom line, this is administration salaries allocated to the utility fund. And if you look over 2021, we had 62,000, 21, 22, it went up to 125,000. Current budget is 151,000, and this year it's up to 224,000. That's out of administration. That's a 148% increase. If you go to finance, you go from 19 to 29 to 34 to 53 this year, which is a 158% increase. It's like we took salaries out of the CRA and we're just plugging it into the utility fund.
No, I provided you that employee listing by department with the percentages. So if you look, typically positions are, like, I'm funded only 5% to the stormwater fund. My finance clerk is 5%, and that's because we pay their bills, we handle their audit, we manage their financials. So realistically, it might be more than 5%, so we're pretty safe with that number.
And I was gonna have the same concerns that Mr. Colombo's talking about. We started our stormwater fund, not just stormwater utility fund, and our reserves were much higher last year, and we were, I think, almost $500,000 down from the year before in terms of reserves. And that's not because of lost revenue as much as that the expenses are going up. What I'm trying to figure out is where these expenses came from. Do we hire more people? I did note that the overtime was higher than I've ever seen it. So I don't know why, we have such a high overtime, so much overtime in that department, which is really blowing the budget when I looked at it. I remember that number stuck out at me. And I wanted to figure out why.
We have had some turnover in the utility department. I think this year alone, we've had 3 people leave. So there is times when, we do need to have overtime. If they're out there on a main break, that's in addition to their normal daily work. So that's overtime. There is definitely a lot of overtime, depending on the season. During the rainy season, we're going to have more overtime.
But we've been able in past years to manage it without all that overtime and all those expenses. And I'm trying to figure out what's changed. What changed from the last few years that I've been sitting up here till now, where you have this big increase, and I don't see anything different in terms of the function of the city where that increase should be there, other than, unless it was just managed differently back then to where we didn't have all that overtime.
And again, I go to page 243 and I'm seeing a 144% increase in human resources from current budget to preliminary budget, 143% increase, 144%. And, it's the same number of employees. I mean, why is it costing that much more? I mean, you know, granted, we're talking $7,000, but still we're talking $7,000. I don't get it.
That was one of the things that I wanted to talk about, is we need to manage the water utility department, and that's the place where we may need to make cuts if we have to make these budgets, so we're not hemorrhaging money out of our reserves.
So we did add another utility crew member, and then we are increasing our IT position from part-time to full-time. We do now have a grant coordinator, which we didn't have previously. So there are a couple new positions that contribute to the salaries.
But $500,000 is, you know, you're talking about, those additions are probably $100,000 if you collectively. There's, you know, just so much more
What are you referencing the $500,000?
in reserves that we've done.
So FY21, they did not do any cost allocations. That's about $500,000 from the utility fund. So that's why it looks very different.
And
If you look, every other year it did, though.
my concern is our utility fund should be making money, not losing money. We're going the wrong direction.
Right.
So
I agree.
and it goes back, I think this is probably the second year in a row that I've been asking to do rate study in the CIP for the water and sewer as well, and it just hasn't been done because those rates need to be looked at, and fees.
I'm sorry to interrupt, I apologize. There's a mosquito over here.
I know, I'm having the same issue.
I'm
not
so if you
being
see me like this, I'm not crazy. Maybe I am. Didn't we put in to have a rate study done, and one was presented, correct? Or a company was presented, is that, am I?
That was for stormwater.
Stormwater.
Yes.
We have to go out to bid. Well, we're going to go out to bid for the utility fund, yeah.
Utility is going to cost a lot more money based on.
Would the same company be doing, it's like, didn't Ayers give us a bid for like stormwater and utilities and everything together, but then we tried to
They give us
piecemeal it out, or?
Well, I mean, yeah, my not to interrupt, but I am. Jim, you can help me out here too. With water rates, generally, if you're going to get somebody that's going to help you study the water rates, what we should be charging, that's a pretty specialized thing. You just don't hand it off to any.
Well, I can comment historically from that. I think the first problem is that the conversation constantly goes between a rate study and CIP. They're two very different things, but we use the terms interchangeably, and that's why we keep going off in the wrong direction, in my opinion.
Okay.
Both the stormwater fund requires a plan, okay, and I interpret that plan to be that you've got to, give it some thought and let somebody do it. Yeah, with regard to water, you have to have a reasonable charges for water, and it's common law, so you can't just say, well, it's reasonable because we need this much money, so generally we hire someone for a rate study just for reasonableness, okay? Now, a rate study, I remember for a fact that when we had one done in 2007, it cost $5,000. Okay, even if it doubled today, it would only be 10. There's companies that do it all over. You can get them, they're a dime a dozen. They're going to crunch numbers. You understand me now? Whereas a CIP is a capital improvement plan. Okay, that's where you go out and say, well, look, we have a certain amount of assets out there, capital out there, and should we be putting money aside for the capital? Or wait till we have an emergency on something and we need $300,000 for a certain set of pipes, and how long they're going to last. Some things HOAs do, that's a capital improvement plan. Now, with regard to the question being rate studies, they're, I understand, relatively easy to get, and they're relatively inexpensive because they're just going to crunch numbers. Okay, pretty much. They'll ask some questions, they'll look at what other cities charge and things like that. Whereas a capital improvement plan is just the opposite end of the spectrum. Now, I can't tell you what's been asked of companies for quotes over the phone and things like this, but they're two very different animals.
But my
And
point.
help it all tell you what that's the issue.
Well, my point is,
You
the
need
rate,
something.
the rate study is what we need now.
That's
and
correct.
But that should be a much simpler thing to get than a CIP. It should be able to get one fairly quickly, and fairly quickly, I would think.
I would think.
We had one done, what was it, rural somebody or
There's
something?
somebody in California, I think we used to say, that was done the first time, and this other one, I wasn't here when the one that you're looking at, and, we changed the code, you can do it by resolution now, you did it by ordinance in 2013, the code's rather clear, I have it here.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, but,
yeah, you can look up how much in 2013 that cost.
Well, my recollections of 2013 is, yeah, we.
Probably 10 grand?
Yeah, it
something like
wasn't a
that.
terrible amount of money.
Right.
But we spent a lot of time on it, deciding where the tier levels were gonna be.
Right.
I mean, there
Right.
was a lot. Yes, they come in and they make recommendations, but we also look at it from our standpoint. Where do we want the tiers? How do we want them to break? Factoring in, discouraging, irresponsible use of water and those types of
If there's
things.
environmental concerns, that goes to the reasonableness of it. You make it a most important thing. If someone's gonna look at, at least analyze, like, well, what do, average, single-family home, how much water do they use? Well, if it's 50, on the average, 5,300 gallons, you guys set it at 5,000 for incentive and then made that graduated plan, I guess.
Well, actually, we graduated it down. I mean, it was like, 1,000 gallons.
In the beginning, you kept it low, however you average that out, it's an incentive to save water. Okay. And,
Like you said, though, I think 6,000 gallons is sort of the benchmark everybody bandies about as the average household.
well, ours is 5,000, right?
But I'm just saying averages, when people talk about average.
Mhm.
If you're gonna compare us to somebody else, apples to apples, you tend to look at, 6,000 gallons.
Right, and whoever does rate studies will give you that information, they'll type it all out and tell you this is what the average is, so you can make a reasonable rate.
What I'm suggesting is I think the rate study should be done before the budget, so we know exactly what we're
I
setting.
don't think we can get a rate study done before.
So we're gonna have to pick an arbitrary number then.
Well, this is balanced right now, so.
We're gonna need to pass an ordinance.
Kind of like it or not, we gotta pass an ordinance. I mean,
Well, 2 readings, the budget's gonna, there's no council meetings between now and the first,
our fiscal year ends September 31st. We're on
But I
out of
think
time.
that's one of the
In other
things.
words, we can't put out for bid now to get somebody to do a rate study, then do a rate study, then implement a rate study, and get that all done by September 31st. We just can't do it.
But I don't know if you need to go out to bid for that, if it's gonna be under,
25,000.
25,000.
Get quotes.
but if it's just a straight rate study, I think you should be able to do that without going out to bid.
It's under 25,000.
Sure.
I don't know what it is,
Yeah. Again, I don't know what it is either, and I still question getting them to work on it, coming up with the numbers, bringing them back to us, having us make a decision. We're up against the wall.
Right, but that's why we're asking for it back in September, because we talked about this. So,
So let me ask a question. What specifically are you looking to? You're looking to increase the millage rate by 0.05?
Yeah, that's just for the council salaries, to add those as well.
Okay, so you're looking to increase the billing unit from 3 to 8?
Oh, no, I'm just estimating, because they were kind of curious where we would land, and that's what I estimated, but we'll have, yeah,
Yeah, we're not approving
no,
any.
no.
We're approving a budget which is a framework which is based on assumptions. We're
that's what
approving
all
a budget
budgets are,
because we
right?
have to do it. Yeah, but it's not, every line item in a budget, we're not approving that line item.
Right.
In other words,
Right.
if we budget X amount of dollars and we have something under it, an item, any other part of our budget, just because it's in the budget, it's not like that's now an approved expenditure. We're just approving a budget. Budget's a blueprint. It changes throughout the years.
Right.
Throughout the year, I should say.
Yes.
So, basically, right now, she came up with a balanced budget
Okay.
without raising rates.
Okay.
Correct.
Correct.
So that's without changing the ESUs or the.
Right, so for stormwater, we would basically just use salaries right now, and we would hold off on all projects until we got a rate study done and can fund them.
I don't care, I just want to make sure everybody's have the same understanding here.
Yeah, no, that was just a projection of, yeah,
And so in other words, this budget here, since all you're doing is saying, hey, put this on for the first reading of the resolutions.
Right.
There's no other meetings in between. So this budget is predicated upon the existing ESU system?
Correct.
And the existing water rate?
Yes, but these are our true operating expenditures. So this is what we would spend if we had the revenues coming in from a higher ESU. However, we are just going to fund.
No. So if we don't have the revenue coming in, how does it balance? Right, how does it balance?
It's an estimation. We're just budgeting revenues. We're estimating they'll be around.
Well, are you estimating 8 ESUs or 3 ESUs?
Yeah, so this is what it would be at around 7.35 ESUs.
You're estimating that, and it's not realistic that's, how you're estimating a revenue source that doesn't exist yet.
Right, because we intend to do a rate study. So once the rate study is completed, the revenues will increase. Otherwise, you'd have to amend the budget. We can do that as well if you'd like. We can amend the budget revenue. We could do that later as well. This is just an easier route where we don't have to amend it later after we do a rate study.
No, as well, I would presume, I'm not an accountant, but I would presume that you then calculated on a reasonable basis how long that would take, and so you.
Right. Which is why I said we would just fund salaries for now. Right.
I mean, that's all reflected.
Right. So we wouldn't do anything except for fund salaries from it for now until the rate study's in place. No projects.
Do you have enough to fund the salaries out of there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so any projects will be suspended until.
Correct. Exactly.
And what project are we talking about? Do you know? Do you have any idea?
I don't have the details of them, but
There's a capital improvement plan, this is not the thing. That shows things like,
yeah, it's just
capital project, stormwater.
Just any capital projects would be, basically from that fund, so it would be stormwater related projects.
But stormwater.
Which we did have projects listed for next year as far as, replacing stormwater lines, to getting them up to code. A lot of our lines throughout the city are not the 18 inches that they should be. That was some of the, quite a few of the projects that we wanted to do, things like that. But if the stormwater system is operational, this would just bring us up to code. And of course, the larger size of the line, the more, the easier the flow of water coming in and out. But those were projected projects. But of course, give or take how the year goes, emergency projects can also be, we can use utility funds to do those projects if an emergency came up. Or of course, we can, be a contingency.
But the same, we're talking stormwater right now, but we're talking both stormwater and utilities, so the same applies to utility. I mean,
Yes.
we've got a lot of things planned, capital project wise, there's a heck of a lot more in utilities than there is in stormwater.
But why wouldn't we want to put some of those capital projects to the side until we have the capital improvement plan? Because you may have some better direction on where we're spending our money or how we should be spending our money.
And we could do that. We could do that as well. It's just, it's the projects that we have planned. It's just, to benefit the current infrastructure.
No, and when we do a CIP, they may agree with the same projects.
Right.
But I think if we're going to spend that kind of money, that it should come from an outside source, because we don't have an engineer on staff in the city to come out and say that, this should be our long-term plan or goal. So that just has to be outsourced. I don't see any other way around it, particularly if we're going to make infrastructure improvements. I think that that we should have an engineer to guide us and to how and when we should do that. So, like I said, I'm not comfortable with the budget where we're saying where it's contingent on us raising rates and hope that the rate study comes back to where we want it. That just makes me really uneasy. I'd rather amend the budget than do that. I would rather set it like we have it now, which would be what is it, $3?
Yeah. ESU. Yeah.
Only put salaries in there and budget about that. And balance the budget that way, and then amend it once we change, do a rate study and change it, and then amend it and put our CIP plan in to improve infrastructure. I'd rather go the other way than the way we're going now in the budget.
Have we not, never mind.
Yeah. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but
Well, no, I mean, I agree. Again, I'm questioning a lot of things that are in this particular budget, specifically different salary line items. Again, yeah, if you move them, just like with, the city council salary, if you move out of this in a general fund, it's gonna have an impact on military, so. So right now, you know, my concern is, I don't necessarily see, I'm not really comfortable, again, without a rate study, which would arguably give a clearer measure of what salaries should be in the utility fund budget, which would ultimately translate into our utility bills. By relying on those salaries being in the utility fund right now, it almost forces our hand when it comes around time to set those utility rate bills that, you know, now we've got a bunch of salaries in there, which is gonna mean even higher utility rates. Again, part of a study that I want to see, along with the other items we've spoken about, is I'm just seeing increases in salaries from different departments here that just seem to be across the board 50% increase. You know, it's got up 150%, it goes up 150%, it goes up 150%.
And along what you're saying, one of the things I was going to ask Mr. Dude if he was here is a chart of the city employees and whether or not we've had the same amount in past years. So I don't know where all the increases are coming from.
No, you could look at it. I mean, it's
Yeah, but we have additional employees too.
No, we don't have that many additional employees. We've been at like at 50 FTEs forever. It's not like we doubled our staff.
So it's just the salaries went up to a certain degree.
Well, they only went up 3% for next year, 2% for last year.
So they were shifted then. It's gonna be one of
Well,
the.
we took it out of the CRA, you know? I mean, we took some of the salaries out of the
Salaries that were
CRA
being
and
paid
they're
out
now.
of the CRA aren't being, and from my perspective, to make up for that, they're being.
I got it. Because we had to reinvent the wheel with the salaries because of the CRA changes. All right, I get that.
One might argue that, you know, the same argument against the way we were putting salaries in the CRA applies to putting it to utilities.
That's a different argument because I think that's the same issue that they have, for example, in Zephyr Hills. And, you know, one of the things I asked Mr. Duke to potentially do is not just lean on experts, but you may want to have a conversation with the folks over at Zephyr Hills to see, you know, kind of how they balance theirs out too, you know, to make sure that we're consistent with other cities in the area that have a water.
Zephyr Hills used to balance their water bill by selling water to Nestle. So.
Oh, I get it, but the bottom line is they have the same issue though that we have.
Yeah, they finally couldn't do that.
Sure. So, you know, but for all these reasons, that's why I'm out of a comfort zone because I think that we should have had some of these studies done.
That's what I was waiting
Well,
for.
you know,
We've talked about this. I don't understand why we're talking about it in the 19th hour.
Well, it's not done yet. I mean,
Well,
what are you
I'm
gonna
saying,
do?
why wasn't it done? Why didn't we have a rate study done if we've talked about this?
And
You don't have an answer. I'm not asking you for an answer.
No, I understand that, but I know that.
You know, and I would add to that, you know, historically, you know, what we're talking about right now at the end of August, we would be talking about at the end of July. I mean,
Sure.
we started the budget process late, in my opinion, later than we should, considering how much time and effort and thought we should be putting into a budget process. We're late all the way around this year.
So the question is, what do you do?
Of course,
about
I
it?
can't change that. I can't turn back time, so.
Well, we have to tell Ms. Gosselin what direction we want to go. And I would rather budget for what we have now in terms of revenue, because I think that's really the only fair way to do it. And then we can make those amendments once we finish do the study and we reset the rates. That would be my preference, but to speculate on what we may change the rates to later and then base a budget on that, I'm not comfortable with
Yeah,
that.
I can't say I'm comfortable with that either. I mean,
So-
and they may be pretty good guesstimates, but that's what they are, they're guesstimates.
I think we have to balance the budget on what we have. And I don't know if that's possible or not.
I can look at that. Yes, we can do that for salaries. But all other operating expenses would be cut. And then I'm not sure, amending the budget mid-year, Jim, if there's, you know, if we have to report to the state, or I'm not sure what's involved with that.
I know you can do it. I would presume you'd have to report it to the state. I don't think it has any significance that way, one way or the other. I presume you do. I really don't know whether the Auditor General would get something like that. I don't think I've ever been here when we did, or amended the budget, but you can do it. That's for sure. You're going to move it between major funds. just to add that from a legal standpoint in terms of timeframes, the last, and I'm talking water rate study, was done by ordinance. I don't know why. I wasn't here. Section 138 is water consumption rates. This is not from the stormwater section, from the water section. The rates to be charged to customers by the city water system is to be determined by resolution of the city council. So maybe that came in afterwards, but I suspect it was just done by resolution for some other reason. So you only have to have one reading of it. I'm giving time frames here. Okay, so if you do pass it, however, the other issues is for a local government water utility can increase a rate or charge, you have to provide notice of the proposed increase to everyone through the utility billing process and set a hearing date so everyone can come. And my only sensitivity to this entire conversation is the fact that we have customers outside the city that pay 25%. There's been legislation proposed to get rid of that, okay? And what's going to happen is when, it's one thing, when our residents get something saying we're changing it from 5,000 to 6,000, before the next rate goes in, things like that, or your ESU's going from a $3 charge to a $7 charge, but people outside can join together real quick because that can start a momentum in a class action. So I really want to make sure we do it correctly. I don't care whether you lower it, I don't care whether you high, what you do.
Because they're not part of our
sure. Yeah, so it's going to take a little bit of time. How much time it's going to be to call up and get a rate study, I can't tell you any of that.
Because they're not part of our city charter, so they're going to be handled differently.
That's correct.
Correct.
So I'm a little more sensitive to making sure we do it in a reasonable fashion.
So my thought or recommendation would be that we set the budget for what we know our revenue base is now. And then if we do a rate study and we amend or adjust those rates, and you have more revenue, then we'll amend the budget consistent with what what the revenue is going to be.
I guess you can do that. I don't know if we're a rate study person. You're going to provide them that. Well, we can do it on a balanced budget, but we want to charge them money because it's really not balanced, right? That's
Well, it's balanced for salaries, but not balanced
Well, you have to explain
for
all
your
that. I'm not
capital
big fan, yeah.
expenditures and the projects that
Yeah.
have to be done to improve the infrastructure.
So essentially getting
On
down,
austerity.
Yeah.
getting down to what we're doing today, I mean, it's essentially like what we would normally do in a workshop. So we're not voting on anything today, we're giving direction.
You're just giving direction. Problem is that whatever you say to do in terms of direction is going to be here for the first reading of the resolution. We do it by resolution. And then if you change, remember the public will show up. It's already in everybody's trim notice that they're going to show up. They're going to be here on September 8th, okay? But can you change it between then and the next one? Sure you can. Occasionally one last time to do it, but that's when you make any changes. So all you're doing is bring this to us for the first reading in the public. That's what you're doing. At this late hour, yes.
So I would say the direction that is going back to the mayor's, basically bring it back to us first rating based on existing rates and make the changes where you have to make them.
And by then, hopefully give us some timeframes on when you're going to have a rate study. Not you, but I mean, management's going to have to come up with a time frame so we know exactly, the time frame when we can amend the rates and get back to not just employees, but get back to, capital improvements, which obviously we're going to have to keep up with. And that's for both stormwater and utilities, because utilities we're still, I think we're taking money out of
reserves, yeah. So you want that funded just to revenues? So we may have to decrease that additional position that was requested.
I wouldn't want to add that position, and I think we should cut back as much overtime as we can until we have a rate study in the CIP, so we know what we're doing.
Well, isn't the overtime fixing the broken pipes? I mean, they're not,
Some of it's essential.
they're scheduled 40 hours a week, so.
We could try to dial it back on expenses, on, regular operating expenses and, but those essential functions really should remain in there.
I'd just like to add something. The position that we're asking for is, starts at $13.50 out, for 50 an hour. Just have another, just have another crewman to already take on what I only have 6 or 7 man crew, as a response team, and that's what they do all day long. And the only time we accumulate overtime is when there's a main break. It's not, we don't do any other projects at night. We don't do any other projects. It's only strictly sewer and water emergencies.
Well, I understand, but I've just seen such a big increase, and then I don't know, why that happened or how that happened, but it's just there.
Well, we might not have budgeted to cover what we did last year for this year. So.
Pipes get older every year, the infrastructure is constantly changing, the earth is constantly moving. Every time we have a rainy and stormwater, stormy season, the ground is constantly shifting and moving. Unfortunately, this year with the Duke Energy with poles coming in, that is going to be a factor.
Well, the Duke Energy is a different issue, because I know they broke a lot of pipes, so I understand that. But we should be getting reimbursed for that.
We have to react at the time the water breaks.
Sure.
When we get that reimbursement, that's all well and good, and like I said, that's on that side of it, but we have to react at the moment the water is broken, so we have to do what we gotta do.
I understand that, but the pipes have been in the ground for, 50 years, not 40 years, so the fact that they just break all of a sudden,
This is not all of a sudden,
There's always been.
It's been kind of ongoing.
no, but more so this year
My
than it has in
25
the
years
past.
here, there's main breaks and whatnot, every year. It's just it's the nature of the beast. It's just it's what.
Duke certainly contributed to it, but that's not really, I would say, not the lion's share of what you.
No, absolutely not. Like I said,
But the cost to fix them this year has been higher than in past years, and I'm trying to figure out why that is.
Materials, that'll inflation hits us.
your expenses as far as material costs.
It's just general inflation issues.
Across the board, absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's certainly an explanation. I was just,
Looking more.
yes. I just wanted to know why. So, but that's the same. I don't like the idea of balancing a budget. If we don't adjust those rates and it's coming out of reserves, then I think we need to show that in the budget and plan on doing that until we look at those studies and make those adjustments.
So remove the reserves line then? Because it is shown currently in the budget as coming from reserves.
That's how you did it with
With utility fund, yep, so you can see it's clear.
So I don't have a problem with that. Stormwater was my bigger issue.
Okay.
By consensus, are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, I think she's got the direction. I think.
Is it on the table that we ask management to move forward to get a rate study? Like, not wait.
Yeah, because we have.
Let's move forward with that and put those wheels in motion.
See, I don't know, is John already working on that?
We've asked them to, so I presume he is.
I thought we've asked them.
Yeah, I mean,
And some may know if there's anything in the works on that.
Well, the city attorney can correct me, are we looking for a rate comparison as far as what us, Pasco County, other sister cities?
No, just the basic rate study for our.
Do we want to do a rate study that, once again, because a lot of these companies that we've approached, they've asked for our CIP to want to know what projects that we want to fund per our rate, per the rate study. So that's the kind of question I want to know, is that, do you want a rate comparison so then we can come close to what everyone else is going and hopefully increase our rates? Or do you want an internal rate study done that would investigate everything as far as our plans, our infrastructure, everything going forward?
But that would be part of the CIP, and that's what I think Mr. Matthew was saying is different. We're not looking for the full CIP. We're looking for just a basic rate study with our city to set rates for stormwater and utility. And I know there's a bunch of people on the approved list where we don't even have to go out to bid if it's less than, what is it, 25 grand? So,
Yeah, I mean, from what.
You pick US Water, any of those companies will do a basic
From
rate
what
study.
Sal just said, though, I mean, I don't want this rate study just to be like, somebody comes in and looks at our rates, county rates, Newport Ridge's rates, Zephyr Hills rates.
No, I'm talking about internal with our city.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Sure.
Isn't that what you did here with this cover letter with, what we haven't raised and?
Yeah, I was kind of giving you an analysis of what we currently charge and what surrounding places charge, just to show that we are pretty under on some of the rates. But yeah, but it's good to have a third-party company. Yeah.
But this is the basis of it.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind too, the ordinance that Mr. Matthew brought up earlier, had built-in rate increases, 2.5%, something like that.
It's from 2013, yeah.
Yeah, 20, 14, 15, whatever it was.
Yeah.
This is something that should have been addressed back in probably 16, since that basically expired, and then all of a sudden our rates just stay flat. If that had continued going on, we would be at higher rates right now. So that's a foregone conclusion. That's why it was done in the first place, so that we were not back here every single year looking at water rates. It built in, and I believe the county has the same thing right now too. Their particular rate structure as approved, I think last year, anticipated automatic rate increases over a set period of time.
Yeah, but I'm okay with the rate study that goes out for the next 5 years, like you're talking about with the stepping
No,
rates.
that's absolutely the way we should do it.
Right, I agree.
Pasco County, other entities, they constantly overlap on their rates every year. The proposal that we brought to council about a month and a half ago with Stantec for the stormwater rate, that was the city of Palm Bay. They just renewed a contract to continue. Anyone can research this across the board. Is that Pasco County, other cities, they never let rates lapse. And we all see it. We're all consumers. Well, we're all homeowners and stuff. We see it every year. Is that our water bills, our electric bills, our cable bills, everyone is constantly. It's a 4 to 5% increase across the board every single year. And what they do is at the moment that these rate studies or terms of contracts expire, they're constantly overlapping to continue. Unfortunately for us, we have not. Our utility rates, our stormwater rates have never done that. So, and this is unfortunately where we are today, but as what Councilman Colombo was pointing out, if we would have started a program and continued that, we wouldn't be here today.
But I think what actually needs to happen is just a basic rate study, just a basic rate study now to get us kind of in the ballpark.
Absolutely.
Then a CIP plan to do a long-term plan, and then we may have to tweak the rate study once you get a CIP plan that goes out 10 years to match.
I think we
the
definitely
capital.
need a CIP plan as well, as long-term rates, so we
Sure.
don't go through this,
But
absolutely.
that's going to take 6 months to
I
do
understand
and
that.
implement. So
I understand,
the
right,
the basic rate study has to be done now. I mean,
Yes.
there's just no other way around it.
totally agree.
So that's what I'm asking, not only is to bring the budgetary back, but that should be the first order of business. So when we come back, is where we're at with just basic rate studies for those two fund balances, or two funds.
Okay,
And I know John is looking into it right now. He is, I know he's trying to contact U.S. Water, and he's hit it like a little bit of a dead end there with somebody that left, and so he got a reference from somebody else. So it's kind of, it's a lot of work trying to find a contact and that's willing to do a smaller city.
And one of the ways to go, like I said, I think if it's under 25 grand, I think you can just pick one off the list, because we have a list of approved engineers already. And as long as one of those does it, just do it.
Well, we had Dewberry Engineers, which was on the list. However, I think theirs was over $25,000 for stormwater.
They're looking at a partial CIP issue too. I'm talking about just a basic rate study. Because you have to clarify when you contact them that this is just a basic rate study, not, gee, we want a CIP for the next 10 years and bake some of that in.
Yeah.
Okay? And I think that's the disconnect, is I think there's some confusion, not only on council, but with the staff in terms of just a basic rate study, which is this crunching numbers, versus the CIP, which is long-term infrastructure planning. Apples and oranges, two different things.
Interrelated.
Right. So, just the basic rate study is all we're looking for up here at this point to set the budget right. Anything else on, because we are in the middle of a budget discussion, there's other items in the budget too, and any other concerns in the budget? Other than salaries, which...
No, salaries are my main issue, the rest of it, but pretty, you can look at the years to years, and there's nothing in there that jumps out at you other than things that have gone up in price that you expect to go up in price.
In my commentary on the salaries is it should be the same as CRA in terms of there should be a methodology and a procedure for setting different salaries and different fund balances. So
That's
different funds.
all I'm saying.
So that's the only thing I would ask, is that we have some kind of standard operating procedure or methodology in terms of how we're going to set out those And you may have that already, but we want to be able to
Yeah.
show it like we would, it's no different than the CRA.
Yeah, because in the CRA, as, you know, obviously they come back and said what wasn't being done. It was being done actually at one time, and then they stopped doing it, was you had to re-justify at a regular basis what, say, the city manager spent on the CRA.
No way.
And, you know, and that's time that should have been kept track of and things like that. So,
No, I had the benefit of meeting with the auditors for CRA, and it's an ever-moving target because
Yeah.
you may have a waterfront overlay district project like we have, and there may be a lot more time that Mr. Dude spends on that project while it's going on one year than another year.
Yeah.
So his salary is going to fluctuate like everyone else's. That's why it's
And
going
it
to be
should,
readjusted.
and the problem was, it never did. It was like they were just copying it year to year.
But it's going to be readjusted every year. No different than our budget here for the utilities
Yeah, now.
versus right. So every year when we do the budget, we should be looking at a methodology to make sure we can justify whatever salaries we
That
put
is
in.
exactly what I'm saying, yes.
So.
We should be approaching these funds the same way we're approaching the CRA.
Yeah.
Sure, and the only thing that we're missing here is the methodology on how these funds were broken down into different, salaries were broken down into different fund balances. So that's the only thing that
Well, I did provide the funding percentages, and you will see that they did shift between last year and the new budget. So we are looking at every single salary, and we are adjusting them. We may not have written down justifications, but we can definitely work on that and put those into place. But yeah, we definitely look at every position and see where it's funded and if it makes sense for what that position does.
And that's part of what HR would do, I would presume, is keep track of what everyone's doing on that.
Usually that's myself. Yes.
For the record, you've already entered into a contract with the CRA to do that during budget season.
Right.
I'm glad you're putting it on the record here for anybody when we get audited next year. But we have to do it. It's not like we should be doing it. You have to do it.
Well, that's the next discussion, because we're going into CRA, I think, but, and that's one of the things I was going to touch on over there as well, because that was one of the issues. But there should be no difference between how we do that for CRA and how we do that between general fund and utilities either.
Agreed.
In my humble opinion, I think it should be the same.
I agree.
So, and it sounds like you've already done that. It's just,
Yep, we do.
okay. Anything else in the budget? Department heads, anything? Okay.
They're smart.
All right, this is not an action item, so that closes out the discussion. And the only other issue is old business, which is the limestone pier issue, and that'll be dispensed on to the next meeting.
Yeah.
And looking for a motion.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?